Welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Les Picker and we're broadcasting today from our studios here in Havre de Grace, Maryland. Today we're going to be talking about Capture One 20, the newest version of Capture One, and this will be the first of two broadcasts about it, two webinars. Today I'm going to be talking about it from the perspective of a newbie, so to speak. I've been using Capture One for only a couple of months now. Next week, my assistant and expert on Capture One and on Lightroom and Photoshop, Bob Boyer, he's behind the camera right now and he's going to moderate your questions as we go along. But next week, Bob's going to be doing a more in-depth look at Capture One from the perspective of an expert, and it's a great opportunity for you to ask him all sorts of difficult technical questions about Capture One, anything on your mind. But today, I want to give you the perspective of someone new who's come into Capture One from Lightroom. I'm adept at Lightroom. I teach Lightroom. I've used it for many years now, and I've recently moved into Capture One, so I want to give you that perspective of what kinds of things about Capture One so far. I'm still learning, but so far, what do I like about Capture One, and similarly, what things I still find challenging. So, given that, and please ask your questions. Bob will be monitoring those and then feeding them to me as we go along. So let's take a look at on screen here. As I was saying before, the files themselves, you want to make sure, at least I had to be sure since we do this professionally, that the files were to my liking, which indeed, coming into Capture One, the files are really good, better than the imports that I was getting from Lightroom, at least so it saved me some time, it saved me some effort. So let me get to some of the specifics here to give you an idea. One of the things I really appreciate with Capture One is that the files that come in reflect what I had set up in my camera. What I mean by that is I tend to shoot mostly black and white, actually, even though I've shot color for magazines and for most of my career. Over the last 5 or 10 years, I've been migrating much more toward black and white. And when I shoot black and white, I like to actually set my camera to monochrome, so I'm shooting actually in the black and white format. When I was shooting in Lightroom, when I imported those raw files, I shoot in RAW, of course. When I imported those raw files, they would come in full color, not in the black and white as I shot them. So in Capture One, it reads the files right from the Fuji. I'm not sure if that will happen with your camera, with a Nikon, Canon, Pentax, or Olympus, or whatever. But certainly in my case, one thing I love about it is they come in as is. So let me give you an example. I'm going to bring this picture up on here. This is actually a picture I took on the island of Maui of an old abandoned pier. And you can see when I go from color, I shot it in color. And when I went to black and white, if I look on this, if you look on the left side here, under this black and white, you'll see that I have checked on the bottom left-hand side here, the checkbox says Enable Black and White. Let me see if I can get you a little bit higher here. You can see, enlarge it a little bit. You can see over here in the lower left, it says Enable Black and White. So that it tells you that I've shot this originally in color, but that I made it in post-processing into black and white. But if I go to some of these other photos here that you see, here's a shot I took in the Antarctic. you'll notice that when I go to black and white, enable black and white is not checked. That means I actually shot this with, even though it's a raw file and I have all the color there, I chose to shoot it in black and as a black and white image, so it comes in as a black and white file, which to me is really, really helpful. Similarly, with this image here, you can see that. I'll put it on, can't do, yeah, there's full screen. When I go back here, this, you'll notice that enable black and white again is not checked, so therefore it means that I shot it in that monochrome, with that monochrome choice. So there are just some examples. Another example that of something I really appreciate with the Capture One sort of workflow. Another thing that I really appreciate with Capture One is that when I use some of these sliders with any given image, I find that, let's take an example.
You have to go to Capture One. Go to Capture One.
Oh, sorry?
And full screen it.
I'm in Capture One.
Full screen it with the green button.
Oh, you mean with my green button. Sorry about that, folks. As this whole thing with the COVID and getting online has been a real issue, so here we go.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll be in a second. They see whatever you're looking at.
Okay, well...
so now, if you want the control bar and all that
yeah,
stuff...
I got it, okay.
Just hit Command-T, I believe.
All right, like I said, I'm still learning, so let's put in Command-T as Bob suggests. In this image here...
You're back out. Oh, no, you're good, you're good.
I'm good. Bob says I'm good now. Okay, as we try to communicate and get this, I hope you guys aren't too distracted by this, but this is a funny shot in a lot of ways. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But the idea is here, if I want to apply my post-processing corrections to the whole image, and I want to decrease the sliders are much more sensitive. It gives you more leeway, more flexibility in making your adjustments. I really, really like that. I want to tell just a quick funny story about this one. You'll notice here in the lower left of the image a white card, which accidentally fell out of my pocket as I was shooting. And thank heavens I didn't notice it, and it's in that shot because it's actually an ice cream card. If you get 9 ice creams, your 10th one is free. And I lost it there, left it there. But when I showed the picture to the ice cream place, they took that as proof that I actually did have it. So anyway, so the sliders again. The sliders are really give me a little bit more flexibility. It's not like, you know, having a sledgehammer versus a tacking hammer. I think it just gives you a lot more. It gives me anyway a lot more flexibility.
I use the word finesse myself.
Bob would use the word finesse. I've never known Bob to finesse anything, but but that's okay.
Well, that's only in real life. When it comes to computers, I'm all about finesse.
That's right. It is true. Bob is the computer guy. So let's take a look at a couple of other things here that I think, when I want to show you that I really appreciate. And that is this whole issue of layers in Photoshop. So here's an image that straight out of camera. And in this case, I've already made some changes in it. And you'll notice up here that I have, in this layers area, upper left-hand side, folks, under layers here, you have, I've already introduced some layers. And I want to just show it to you quickly as an example of how easy this is really to use. I'm going to be creating layers for you in just a moment, but let me give you first this example. I applied a radial filter to this, and if I press M, you'll see where that radial filter lies, right? And if you'll take a look, I'm going to switch it on and off to show you what it did. Here's what that scene looked like before applying the radial filter. And once I applied that radial filter, my desire here was to have your eye moving from the sides to the distance. So there's the radial filter, and then that was what I call the inner radial filter because it was focused on that internal part of the pier. And then, but on the outside, I wanted to do something too. So I have an outer radial filter, which looks like this. And on that, what I did, if you'll notice, is I wanted to decrease the amount of light here in order to get your eye to focus toward the background, right? So there's an example of two quick filters. I then made this into a black and white image. And when I did that, there were a couple of other things I wanted to do to it, all right? Let me get rid of these two layers. And what I wanted to do, for one thing, is I felt that the water in the background was a little too bright. I wanted to darken that down. So I created a layer called Darken Water. And you'll see what happens. I'll turn it on and off for you. You can see it is after the layer is applied and beforehand. So what I did, whoops. Oh, sorry about that. Let me just get back to where I was. Okay, press the wrong button here. But for the darken water, you can see all the red here is where I darken that, where I masked out what I wanted to darken. And then, so from before to after, to achieve the effect that I wanted to do. And then finally, the last layer that I put in here was, there were a couple of areas that I wanted to lighten a little bit. So you can see here just a little bit of lightening in various areas to give it a little bit more interest and a little bit more depth in that image. So here we go from the original image to this image to the black and white rendition of it. All right. So another example of the flexibility of the of Capture One. Okay. Any questions? If any of you have questions, send them on in. Let me go through another example here of something that I particularly like, and I'll take this example here. This is a plant that I took in an arboretum on the island of Kauai. And, you know, I just like the textures here and the folds. I like the play of light and shadow in this image, but the color didn't quite do it for me. So, again, more so than in Lightroom, what I love about Capture One is its ability to control colors. So if you look here in the upper left-hand side here, you'll see that I have a, I have here this control, which is a bunch of color bubbles. So if I hit that and go to there, I'm faced with a number of choices, a color editor and a more advanced color balance wheel, which let's hold that off for a future time, but let's focus here with this color editor. There's a basic color editor and there's an advanced. Just for this purpose, I'm going to use the advanced, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, show you how easy it is to manipulate color here to your desires. I'm going to take this color picker and I'm going to just drop it right about over there. All right. And what happens immediately as soon as I leave here is it shows me on this wheel what color range I have selected. Now I can manipulate this. I can go, in other words, if I wanted to lose some of the yellows, I can move that bar a little bit this way. In other words, saying that I only want to affect a smaller portion of this. And I can then go in here to hue, for example, and and go to make it a little bit greener. I can saturate that a little bit more and say, oh, I really want that. And maybe even I'd take lightness down a little, a smidgen. All right? Very, very simple controls. Now look at the difference between where we started from. Oh, I'm in the wrong side. Hold on a second there. All right, here's where we started, a very yellowish green image to now. And that just took a couple of, as you saw, just a quick couple of adjustments, and I'm already where I'd like to be. So I think that to me is a real game changer. It's so easy to manipulate things like color. And you know, if you're a color photographer, then you'll really certainly appreciate that. Okay, let's move on to a little bit more complex color arrangement. This is a little section of what they call a rainbow eucalyptus tree that grows again on the island of Kauai, and I took that back in February. It was taken, as you can see up here, with my Fujifilm GFX, and I might want to start with this one. Let's see, how do I, yeah, there, that's what I want. I might want to start actually with a bit of a crop of this one because I don't like this big bright area over here. So again, I can just go up to the cropping tool and yeah, like that, and whoop. Let's cancel that out. And I'm going to crop out a little bit here just to get rid of that bright area on the right-hand side. And we're done. But now I have all sorts of flexibility with that color tool that we talked about before. So by going into advanced, I can take the color picker again, and I'll pick an area here, let's say in the reds, right? And when I go here, it's showing me reds with a lot of pinks in it. So I'm not going to want to have, I want to actually make this more in the reds, like that. And I'm going to take the hue more toward the reds. Let me just get that back here. And the saturation, I'm going to bring up the saturation of the red. And maybe bring the lightness back a little bit. And let me just get the right. And you can see that certainly in these areas here, I'm getting a lot more, a lot of change in the reds, right? You can all see that before, after, before, after. Similarly, I can come back in here and grab the color picker again. And now I'm going to hit the green area here. And you notice right away the green, you know, the color editor is showing me where I'm focused, right? And I'm going to, again, I can change the hue of the greens. There. Now, what I did is I just did a checkbox where it says View Selected Color Range. If I check that box, it will turn everything but the green that I'm working on into a grayscale. And that can help you to see really more clearly what colors you're working on. So I might bring that green saturation, or you can bring it way up, but I'm just looking for a little bit more subtle changes here. And again, I think maybe I'll bring the lightness down a little bit. And now if I take off the View Selected, and I can see, you'll be able to see before and after here again, the changes that are occurring. So what the thing with the color adjustments in Capture One are so much, it's so much easier to use, and very fine adjustments that you can make is really quite profound. Okay, let me go on to pretty much a final example, but it's one that something in Capture One that I truly, truly appreciate, and that is. So let me go back to my the right place here. Okay, and that is Luma adjustments, right? Based on the Luma Range, as it's called. So here's a shot I took in the Drygalski Fjord in Antarctica. So this is straight out of camera, and what I am doing is I'd like to use. And when I look at it, I would like to maybe get a little bit of color in the sky here, but I don't want the whole sky colored. I want to just hit the highlights over here and over here, and maybe a little bit of the highlights on this snow, and warm them up a little bit. So instead of going in there and trying all different approaches, and then, by the way, there are 3 or 4 different ways you can do this in Capture One, instead I'm going to try to put in a layer that is a Luma Range layer. So watch how I proceed with this. I'm in the layers area, and by the way, one of the beauties of Capture One is that you can remove any of these and actually have it right in front of you, any of these panels, and have that right in front of you. And also you can actually change the order of panels any way that you would like, which I truly love because it follows my workflow, and I find that very helpful. But in this case, I'm going to create a new filled layer. I'll show you what that means in a minute. If I press M for mask, show me the mask, I'm selecting the whole image for a moment. Then I'm going to change this layer to a Luma Range layer. And I'm going to, this is really totally mind-blowing how this works. It's really made a difference in my post-processing. This angle here that you see in this Luma Range is a feathering capability. I don't want to feather anything right now. I just want to have the access to the full range of pixels here. And I'm going to put the mask back on by hitting this display mask box here. And then I'm going to start moving the Luma Range all the way up. Now watch what's happening. It's now removing the shadowed areas from this range selection tool. And I'm going to keep on going until I find the area that I really want to warm up. I don't want to warm up a lot. I want to warm up, yeah, maybe these areas here. So in other words, I want this area of the sky, this area, and as you can see, it's going to warm up a little bit because that's getting direct light from the sky. So this is the area I want. I'm going to hit apply right there. And it looks like nothing's changed because actually nothing has changed. It's now just ready for me to make whatever adjustments I want to make. So I'm going to go into my white balance here, and I'm going to give it a little bit of warmth. Again, I want to be subtle about this. I don't want to be too much. And I'll go back and forth and show you what it actually looks like. So going into option, it doesn't look like I did very much, but look, this is before, this is after. That's just the touch sort of that I wanted in order to add a little bit of light, some warmth to that image, to that sky. And it's so easy. Luma Range gives you a whole bunch of different options. Let me show you another example. And by the way, I always label my layers. So here I am. I clicked on the layer. I'm going to write sky, and I'll say warm, sky warm.
I label mine too. Layer 1, layer 2.
Yeah, yeah. Bob doesn't label them except whatever layer it already comes in. So here, I hit G again. It opens it up. I can hit F to see things full screen. And which, since I'm on this, it's not gonna happen. But So that's really something that I appreciate, is that flexibility. And all the keys are customizable. You can create all your own keys, shortcut keys that you wish. Again, the panels are entirely adjustable. Let me show you one other thing here. I should have mentioned it when I did the colors for you. Let me go back to a color panel that we did. Something I really like about working with the color panel is that you can grab it out, and instead of going back and forth, you can actually see in real time, and you can enlarge these panels so you can see right next to your work what you're actually doing. So it's really very convenient. I like it. You might like it. But again, you can arrange your panels in any way in any order that you wish. Just take them out, put them, arrange the orders. Okay? All right, so what are some of the challenges for me? What I'll, let me, Bob, can I move to, right now to camera for me?
Sure.
All right, I'll go to camera. I'm going to hit cut, and we're back here. You guys are with me now on camera. So some of the challenges, let me talk about that for this. I had to wrap my head around the whole idea of masks and layers. It's frankly new to me, but it was I have to say, it was so easy to learn that you catch on very, very quickly. Now, there's no question that Photoshop is much more powerful, has many more masking capabilities than Capture One has at the present time. But it really works for my kind of photography, the Capture One masking capability. So that is something I just want to say, you will have to get up on the learning curve with it, but it's pretty simple, especially if you follow, I'll make a suggestion at the end of here for something you can do to make your job easier getting up on that learning curve. Another thing for me is it took me a while to learn the import-export concept. I made some mistakes when I was in the field at first, but now I've learned how to get them into the catalog. I'm used to it, but I just want to caution you that at first you may have a little bit of a stumbling block, if you will, with nothing's lost. Don't get worried about that, but to get it imported to exactly where you want could be a bit of a problem, at least at first. Another thing you're going to have to get used to is the whole notion of the catalog in Capture One. It is different from the catalog or library in Lightroom. So I'm still coming to grips with that. I have to tell you that my catalog in Lightroom was pretty disorganized after a while. I mean, I shouldn't say disorganized, but complicated, very complicated. I travel a lot around the world. I lead workshops, so I have folders with subfolders with sub-subfolders and even more subfolders in them. It got very complicated. So what I decided to do when I switched or started using Capture One is I decided to start from scratch, essentially. Make it simple for myself. You can import nowadays. There's a new release of Capture One coming out within the next couple of weeks, and it will make it's already pretty easy to switch your catalog your library from Lightroom to Capture One. But apparently they're saying it will be even easier in the next iteration. But my advice is start simple and work your way up from there. Now, another thing that's quite different from Lightroom to Capture One, something called sessions. I was confused by it at first, admittedly, but
I think you're still confused by it.
Bob thinks I'm still confused by it. He's probably right, folks, but I have learned that sessions are really, really useful when I'm out in the field. I tend to create different sessions for the field, and then when I come back, I import those into my catalog. So let me stop now. We have a question.
Mr. L's asking whether you eliminated Lightroom completely or not?
Okay, good question is, have I eliminated Lightroom completely? The answer is no, not yet. I've only been using Capture One for a couple of months. I would like to be more conversant with it, but I will say this. I am now, all my photography that I'm doing, I am post-processing in Capture One. All right, I like it that much. I'm still struggling with some things. Just today, Bob taught me something that I didn't know before, using the radial masks. Terrific hint that Bob gave me, or technique, I should say. So I'm still learning. But I haven't abandoned Lightroom totally. I still have it on my computer, but I am now using Capture One more and more. I'll still go back to Lightroom for a few little things here and there.
Two really big things.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let me get to that. Yeah. Two big things that I have to go to Lightroom for. One is if I do any kind of HDR. Now, I don't do HDR, frankly. The most I'll do is shoot two images. One I'll expose for the highlights, one expose for shadows, and then combine them. I can't do that in Capture One that I know of just yet. But the other more significant thing is that I can't use it for panos. It doesn't stitch at all. Capture One doesn't stitch, but Lightroom does. So what I've done is I've stitched it in Lightroom and then brought it over to Capture One, and I've worked on it there. Now, Capture One does have photo stacking. Yes, it does have focus stacking, and that is an add-on, and it is I forget which one it is, but anyway, it works well in Capture One, and I use it now for focus stacking. Okay, Bob, another question.
Maryland Photo Alliance is asking whether the adjustments or just the files come over, or just the sidecar files. Basically, what comes over when you import or you use the import into Capture One from Lightroom. You really haven't done that on my advice, so
right.
I'll give the answer real quick.
Yeah, speak up.
And I've talked to you about this.
Okay.
The answer is they have a conversion utility that will attempt to bring everything over, including adjustments, metadata, etc. Which, if you have a small, well-maintained Lightroom library, it can be useful. I would test it on a small sample library to see if it does the things the way you want.
Right. Now, I have done that, Bob, with a couple of folders from Lightroom that I brought over entirely into Capture One, and as far as I can see, the adjustments that I made in Lightroom are carried over. But like you say, I haven't had enough experience with it to really, but I guarantee you by next week, Bob will have an answer to that. So that's just Bob doesn't like these things bothering him, so I'm sure he will.
If you have a big Lightroom library, it could take days.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It'll take a long time if you want to bring it all in. My suggestion is hold off on that. Bring in a couple of folders of your images. Learn your Lightroom. Learn your Capture One. The differences. The layers concept. If you're already a Photoshop user, it's going to be a slam dunk. But if you're not, such as myself, then there is a learning curve to do.
But just to be really clear on the point, there's two ways.
Speak up. Yeah.
I'm just telling you, and then you can repeat it or whatever. But there's two ways to do it. You can bring the images in and leave them where they are, not affecting Lightroom at all, not importing any Lightroom stuff.
Right.
Or you can use the automated procedure that brings in an entire library at a time.
Right.
With the adjustments and everything.
Right.
Okay? So there's two different ways to approach it. One way is clean slate, but not affecting Lightroom. The other way will not affect Lightroom either, but attempts to bring all of the Lightroom adjustments in.
Right.
That way I would suggest exporting a little library of just one thing,
right,
and seeing how it works to decide whether you're comfortable. It's that thing that I'm talking about will take days.
Got it.
if
Got
you
it.
have a big one.
Good. Good. Yeah. So there's that. One other thing I'll mention about that's different from Lightroom is on export. With Capture One, you can export a number of different files at once. Like if you want to export a JPEG, a TIFF, and a PSD or something, you can do it all at once. There are presets that allow you to export everything all at once, which is a time saver, and it's all customizable. So I think it works very well. Any other questions before I make some suggestions?
I'm not seeing any right now.
All right, two suggestions I have. One, go to the Capture One Learning Hub, which I have a link for in the right below here, below this feed, is a direct link to that Learning Hub. The person, David Grover, who does these tutorials, is absolutely fantastic. He's easy to understand. He's low-key, very informal about this, but he really has there are some wonderful tutorials, including if you're a brand new user coming from Lightroom, here's what you can do, here's what you can try. Just a lot of stuff, anywhere from 1-hour tutorials to 10-minute tutorials on specific topics. Now, when you go there, you may you will see two different kinds of tutorials. One for Capture One 20, the latest version, and there will be some from Capture One 12, the previous version. Don't be put off by the Capture One 12. A lot of those tutorials are perfectly applicable to the new Capture One 20. So you can use both, but every week there are more and more Capture One 20 videos, tutorials going up there.
Especially with this lockdown thing.
Yeah, with COVID-19, they're putting up sometimes 1-2 a week. Every week they have at least one, but sometimes it's more than that. Now, final thing I just want to say. Look, I don't know Photoshop, but I do know what Photoshop can do. And Capture One cannot do all of that. So there will be times when you have an extreme treatment that you will need to go into Photoshop if you're a Photoshop user. But I'm going to say 90% maybe of the work that you're going to want to do, Capture One will be more than adequate. And particularly, I love their color controls. I love how flexible the sliders are. It's not like, you move it a little bit and it's like a hammer is falling on your image. It's very, very smooth transitions. So I really am liking it, is what I'm saying as of now. Perhaps I'll give you an update at the end of the year, but in the meantime, next week, this time at 2 o'clock next Tuesday, Bob is going to have a more detailed discussion of Capture One from an experienced user. He's been using it, I think, since version 5. And
well, actually, what I'm going to do is go through the top questions Lightroom users ask me when I do other stuff.
Good. So if you haven't heard that, Bob says that he's going to go through the top 5 or so questions that Lightroom users have asked him over the past couple of years, getting into Capture One. But also, it's a great chance, even if you're an experienced Capture One user, to ask Bob some questions, and he'll hopefully be able to answer. And if not, I know Bob, he'll get back to you with an answer pretty quickly.
Yikes. Now I don't want to do it.
So, anyway, sorry for the glitches at the beginning, folks, but that's the nature of the game nowadays with the COVID and the different platforms that are available, and everybody's online all at once, so it's creating some issues. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Stay healthy. And what else, Bob? Anything else that we need to
Just flip
do?
over to the closeout screen.
Okay.